It's always great to catch up with Congressman Thaddeus McCotter of Livonia, who joins us this morning to cover a variety of issues, as he always does. Our conversations are always supposed to start somewhere, and then they tend to they wander off. Who knows why? I don't know. It's just it's the way the karma works when he's around. Good to have you with us. How are you?
Oh, I'm happy. Today's the 21st wedding anniversary, and Rita said I could talk to you.
Come on. Happy anniversary.
Well, for me, yes. I don't know. I hope she doesn't reconsider this.
Now, tell me this. What did Rita make of Hillary Rosen's comments about Ann Romney never working a day in her life? Because Rita does work. She's a nurse.
She's a nurse. She's a registered nurse. My mother, too, was not pleased. Both my wife and my mother were not pleased with them. My mother had went through a period of time as a teacher where she took time off, and then she went back. And it wasn't time off if you had to deal with me and my brother, I can assure you. And my wife's done the same, where she's as a nurse, as you know, Frank. She took time off to help here with the kids and then went back. And whatever decision women make regarding how their careers and their child rearing occur is up to them. And it's an individual decision. It's made in conjunction with the best interest of the family. And either way you go, it is very, very hard work.
Yeah, well, but there's this whole issue of resentment toward the wealthy that's grown as a part of this campaign through the Occupy movement and all of that. There's this vision that Ann Romney was just some Valley Girl Detroit version, or and she always had the silver spoon in her mouth, and she and Mitt just had a unlimited checkbook, and they just spent money willy nilly any way they wanted, and so they don't know how anybody lives, and it's not true. I mean that's the bottom line in all this, and it also distracts from something very important, and that is the economy.
I think you're absolutely right, Frank. That's the key. The issue that's number one in the forefront of voters' minds is the economy. We've already seen indications in the polling that Governor Romney is trusted on this issue to help create conditions for entrepreneurs and workers to bring back America's prosperity from this sputtering economy. And I think that's the one thing that the president does not wish to talk about. I think that's the one thing that he has to talk about because, again, that's what the voters want to hear about.
Do you think that's why Governor Romney is ahead in the latest poll over the president? The Fox News poll had him up 46-40.
Yeah, so I think that it's going to go back and forth, and I caution Republicans. As we remember from 2004 when we had incumbent President Bush, and the constant message was that as an incumbent president, you're going to be getting some negative poll numbers, likely right up until Election Day, and that proved to be the case. And as I've also warned my colleagues, never underestimate President Obama or the Democratic Party as political opponents.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're great politicians. There's no question about that, and they get their message out, and whether you believe it's shaped by a media or something else, they're very effective at it, and they're doing it now. When their idea of talking about the economy right now is to talk about the Buffett rule taxes, the Buffett tax, and trying to compare that to Ronald Reagan, ignoring that Reagan wanted a fairer tax system that actually reduced the rate for millionaires.
Well, they're talking about the redistribution of wealth, not the creation of wealth, because their track record on the creation of wealth is not something that they're going to wish to highlight as they head into the election, again, with the economy being number one in the voters' minds. And what the practical, very wise American people do is they hear the intermittent skirmishes over specific political issues, such as this comment by Ms. Rosen. But at the end of the day, they want to know what are the economic policies going to be to get us to have economic growth in this country. And that's what they're going to be focused on, not the day-to-day chattering about certain specific tangential issues. They're very focused on the bottom line these days. And as we saw, Frank, you saw jobless claims go up this month or this week. So there's already people going to be very concerned, as most people are. They're going to be very concerned that the economy is not going to be on a full path to recovery at the present time, and they want to know how we can get it there.
Mm-hmm. Now, but the president can make a case, and his supporters can make a case, that when he talks about a Buffett tax, he is talking about the economy, and he's talking about how government can help the economy grow and how this is going to be fair for everyone and will reduce the gap between the rich and the poor and will cut the deficit at the same time.
By making government richer, we're not enriching the American people. What we're going to do is enrich big government, make it bigger, fatter, more bloated, and more out of touch with the way in which people live. Again, as you and I've talked about, the government has to be restructured to match the times. They're going in the exact opposite direction with regressive policies. The president spent record amounts of money in his term, and now his bill's coming due, and he's going to do everything he can to get more money into the government, because at root, the ultimate power base of the Democratic Party remains big government, and they're going to do everything they can to prop it up in the age of globalization, and it's not going to work.
The other part is once you start a government program, there's no turning back on it. It's very tough to undo, isn't it?
Once you take money out of the private sector, which is more efficient than the public sector, and give it to big government, economic growth is going to suffer. That is what's going to happen. So when the president talks about redistributing wealth rather than creating wealth, you can judge how the bottom line effect's going to be on working families, on Americans, in terms of their economic prosperity.
You know, your name came up in a column at Daily Caller this week. I saw by a fellow named W. James Antle. In fact, he titled it after you, W. James Antle III. Welcome back, McCotter. And ignore this first line, which says Thad McCotter's presidential campaign was a disaster. That's how he starts it. But he says you could have served as a real lesson for Rick Santorum in the race. Somebody who's a better mix of economic populism and social traditionalism, a conservative like you who doesn't carry the social conservatism to an extreme as Santorum seemed to for voters. Did you feel that you could have had a further impact on this race going forward?
Well, Frank, when you get blacked out by the media and don't get in the debates, it's very hard to say whether or not you've been a disaster. In fact, I've always said that I took it as a great compliment that I wasn't put in the debates, because I know from my colleagues and I know from other people that that's what they wish to see. Now, had you been a fool and gone into the debates and self-immolated, then I would subscribe to that. But the chance that you don't get out of the box is one thing. But then in Washington they say something nice, like, hey, it was something bad. They say something bad, they say it was something nice. So I'll focus on the nice part.
There you go. He said you could have at least taught, this is how he closes it. He says, at the very least, McCotter might have been able to teach Santorum how to play Freebird.
Well, I don't read those things. It doesn't matter to me. I don't know if Rick's into Freebird. I think, in some ways, forget about me. I think that those types of articles about Rick, look, he did the best he could. He did what he thought was right. He went out and he garnered a lot of support from people. He won states. And he, at one time, was considered a disaster and written off, too. And now, what you're seeing is he's made his decision to leave the race, and it's time for the party to come together. In terms of the themes that I talked about, I do thank Mr. Antle for putting those out there, because I think these are themes we're going to be dealing with for years. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent, how our government is structured in the age of globalization is something that's going to be a recurring issue that we're going to talk about. And as the public gets it, they know that the economy is the number one issue in terms of its immediacy now. But what we're also looking at are the decisions that are going to be made are going to affect generations of Americans for years to come, much like at the start of the 20th century. So, in many ways, I'm glad that I got those out, and it would mitigate against his statement. It was a disaster, wouldn't it? If someone could learn from me.
Well, indeed. Biggest question is, where are you taking Rita for 21st anniversary dinner?
If I don't take her wherever she wants to go, that would be an unmitigated disaster.
And what's the 21st anniversary gift?
You know how this works, Frank. I get her something, I give her the receipt, she takes it back, and she's grateful for the effort.
The 21st anniversry traditional gifts are nickel and brass. So there you have it. You can give her.
So I can give her 6 cents, a nickel and a penny.
Don't you dare. Happy anniversary. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Frank.
Congressman Thaddeus McCotter. Here on the Frank Beckmann Show. We'll see you after the news.